Previously on the Game On podcast.
Just talk about some of your coaches.
Well, we had my first coach, Norm, was Ian Stafford. He was he came from Port Adelaide, and he was a tremendous coach. He was an ex-school teacher, probably be retired now. He put all the disciplines in place where he focused very heavily on the skill level, on working with our hands and our feet. We touched the ball hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times during our training sessions at under 17s, and I think that was a key to the development of some of the players that came through the system. With that skill level, I think that form of training helped us immensely with our skill level, and I think that was one advantage for me anyway, because I was okay with the skills. I was good with my hands. I was good with my kick. And that all came from the tutelage that I got in under 17s. So I think it was just embedded in me from a young age.
Winnie helped in that regard as well, didn't he?
Oh, Winnie was great. Winnie was more there as a leveller. He was because I was a bit of a rat bag, and I think most kids are when they're 16, 17. And I think he was just a bit of a leveller. He was just laying down the law, saying these are the things we want you to do, and coming from big number 2'8", you didn't want to argue with him too much. You took his advice, and you did it. You got the old walk around the oval every now and again.
Yes. Yep.
You didn't look forward to those too much, but he wasn't. He wasn't too harsh about it. He'd just make sure you explain where you went wrong, what you need to do, where you need to focus. And I think that sort of individual tutelage was very helpful from the 2'8", for sure.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
Welcome to Game On. My name's Pete. Once again, joined by Malcolm and David Payne, just recalling his opportunities with Johnny Wynn, who we've spoken about with a few different players over the course of our podcast journey, in that he was a great mentor, not only to Payne, but a lot of other players as well. And it's just amazing how one player or a couple of players can really steer or drive the ship in the right direction.
Winnie influenced a lot of people. Unusual character very much so, cutting sense of humour, ironically a fellow non-drinker, and Winnie never did drink. People actually used to think he was drunk, but it was just Winnie.
Just acting up, yep.
Being Winnie. But he was also the oldest person at Carmel Court, so he was the head prefect, for want of a better term.
Yep.
And so John Wynn has influenced a lot of people, and it's you also get from the state guys who played. Barry Robin speaks in great respect of John and things like that as well.
Absolutely, and we thank David Payne for his time and fantastic interview that you can go back and listen to it over the journey for sure.
No, I will chase him up over that. I have messaged him once, but it wasn't about that, so I will chase him up for that. I did ask KG on Saturday morning.
Yep.
KG said he can remember it.
Yep.
But I haven't chased it up off Payne yet. So.
Absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to listen to that one for sure.
Around the grounds.
And today on Around the Grounds, we're going to talk some golf with Craig Martin. We're going to talk some SNFL about North Adelaide, the soccer Adelaide United, and are talking about this week's special guest, Jake Weatherald, in our Local Legends segment. So looking forward to that. But first...
Final ball. 4 to tie it. And that won't be it. Mashungwe clean-handed. And the Adelaide Strikers are back-to-back WBBL champions.
did not seem enough. But yet, they spent time and have been the best bowling unit in the competition. And when they needed it the most, they stood up.
Well, mate, all I can say is you little beauty, but a few heart palpitations going through some of the lineup and the innings. It didn't look like 125 was going to be enough.
I went in Saturday night, and we certainly fell away as soon as Talia McGrath got out from the 10th over, because it looked like we were going to get 140 to 150 at least. Mm-hmm. 125, you're thinking, right, that's not likely enough. Their one chance is they've got to get Grace Harris out early. She got dropped at slip.
Yep.
Then gets caught. And probably it was a little bit bizarre. Brisbane always seemed to have the game in control, but I think they let it get away from them with too many dot balls.
Yep.
It was a hell of a lot of dot balls. I actually try and chase that up a little bit more, especially off Amanda Wellington. And all of a sudden, guys and ladies I was sitting with,
thought that you were half a chance?
Yeah, we kept saying, we're not out of this sort of totally. And then when Talia McGrath got those 2 wickets and bowled their other big hit in the middle order, mm-hmm. Thomas, I think, I thought, geez, we are right in this. And then Katie Mack dropped the sitter on the boundary and it rolled over the line for 4. You thought, oh, my God, that's probably going to cost them.
Well, I was going to mention that both teams had some fielding errors that probably cost them in the end. I thought the fielding errors from the Strikers might cost them in the end. And,
I did.
And then what ended up happening was that the Heat made a couple of errors at some crucial times as well. Unbelievable final, really, when you think about it.
Oh, and then I think their structure, they're very well planned. McGrath's a very good captain. She keeps her cool. Mm-hmm. A lot better than Meg Lamming in that way, ironically. Mm-hmm. And kept clear thinking and kept, no, we're still right in this, sort of thing.
Yep.
And interesting decision. Ironically, as I just happily walked out, I puked by fluke. I ran into Dizzy. Dizzy went through, would you have bowled Amanda? And I said, yeah, personally, I would have. Well, I thought this, so we talk. So that was
sliding doors moment.
Yeah. So that was actually interesting to get the Strikers coach's thoughts on and that. So, but she kept her cool. And the other thing was Brown's last over to only singles, and the run rate kept going up. You kept thinking, geez, they're right here. And then it got to the stage where the start of the last over, I'm thinking, right, provided she doesn't bowl any wides, we should win this. Gets the wicket, gets hit for 6 the next ball.
Yes.
We thought, oh, geez.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
what
too.
odds on someone hitting a 6 first ball?
Yep.
And then caught on the boundary next ball.
Very nearly a 6
3 yards away from being the absolute hero, doing a Carlos Braithwaite.
Yes.
But, yeah, they kept their cool. Fantastic.
Back-to-back champions.
Yeah, well done.
Absolutely. Yeah. As I said, we didn't get a chance to speak about the WBBL Strikers a lot because of the World Cup. We were sort of focusing on that and snuck under the radar a little bit and just did what they did. And I think you mentioned before that they've got a champion team rather than a team of champions.
Yeah.
And it really showed that their bowling was far superior than any other team this year.
And they did that. I think their depth of their bowling was the crucial bit. They didn't have their 4th or 5th bowler fall away like a couple of the other sides did. And in the end, the 120 odd was, and it was good. Adelaide Oval was alive, 12, just over 12. I thought they might have got a few more.
I thought 15 might be about right.
Concert, the Fui probably can't, and out of that, December, so, but as another person involved said, hey, if you'd said, Ian Jaggard said, hey, imagine if 5 years ago you'd said you get 12,000 to a women's cricket final.
Yep. Yeah, you'd be
said, hey,
laughed out of the room. Fair call.
Yeah.
Certainly the emergence of women's sport, not only in the football but also in the cricket, has been huge. And we'll talk a little bit more about the footy in a minute with the women's final as well.
It's not that we haven't managed. There's been some attempts to get a person on with no luck.
Yep.
So I won't give up, but it's been a bit frustrating in that regard.
Absolutely.
So anyway,
shout out to anyone that's out there that wants to have a bit of a chat about the WBBL, but we'll move on. All right, we'll stick with cricket, mate. Cricket Australia is banned Bancroft or Renshaw's Warner's best replacement in the team?
I'm not so much sure whether it's the best replacement. I think they're pretty keen to get Cam Green up to 4. That's the position he's batted and made all his runs in Shield cricket. And that would mean Smith to 3, which would mean Labuschagne to open.
Right.
So I think there's a few things to happen. I think Bancroft's game has improved. He is a lot straighter than what he was years ago. And he looks, when he's batting in Shield cricket, to be the best player at Shield level. Yep. And that. So he's for me, is the one.
Probably the one, yep.
Yeah. But I think, Renshaw and Harris are still around the mark as well. I would hope out of those 3 that if it is a line ball, Bancroft's fielding should get him over the line, especially compared to Harris.
Yep.
Harris is easily the worst fielder out of the 3, which I think should be remembered.
All right, bit of a watch and see on that one.
Yeah.
Australia's first squad picked for Pakistan: Scott Boland, Alex Carey, Pat Cummins, Cameron Green, Hazelwood, Travis Head, Usman Khawaja, Marcus Labuschagne, Nathan Lyon, Mitch Marsh, Lance Morris, Steve Smith, Mitchell Stark, and David Warner. Any real surprises there for you?
Not really. No.
Is it interesting that there hasn't been a lot of Shield cricket played by some of these players before, obviously, some of these tests?
It's the schedule.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it's quite crazy that now we have all this time off before there's another Shield game played.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, mate, we'll finish off with the Redbacks. South Australia, again, just failing to get the job done against Victoria, going down by 23 runs with a couple of sessions to spare.
Frustrating lack of batting again. The crucial bit. And you can even say, in some ways, the final margin of 23
flattered them a little bit
because the last Agar had a slog and slogged well, but got 50-odd. What was disappointing there on the last day was Alex Carey played a shocking shot. He's a gun player and he looked fantastic. Gets to 81 and played a shocking shot to get out. Now, if he gets through to lunch, so Menenti is still to bat after lunch. He got out playing a shocking shot, and Menenti, so it was a double wicket, effectively, was what really...
2 for the price of 1.
And that's, I love Alex. I'm very, very pro-Carey. But my one thing against him is he's just got to finish games off and be the not-out player is what should have happened in that game.
Okay. We'll keep a bit of an eye on that one, obviously, throughout the summer. But the Shield season doesn't recommence until February now because of, obviously, the BBL and a bit of the one-day stuff that's coming about. But we'll keep a bit of an eye on that as well, and hopefully the second half of the season is a little bit more kinder to the Redbacks than the first half. All right, mate, we'll move on to the AFLW first here. Brisbane v North at Icon Park. Complete sellout for a grand final days before. Do you think they should have moved it, or were they hemmed in by where it is actually scheduled at this time of the year?
Maybe. I'm a little bit bemused that Marvel was available. Now, if that's not available, that's the stadium, no problem.
Yep.
But hang on, if Marvel's sitting there, but then are they thinking, hang on, if we get 12 to 15 in a 40-odd thousand stadium, it looks empty, and that's why the Crows prefer Nord Oval, and so I understand that.
Yep.
Maybe supply and demand surprise them. North Melbourne's not a club with a huge number of support.
And Brisbane obviously being a travelling team.
So I think that probably surprised them. So, yeah.
Congratulations obviously goes to Brisbane. Brisbane were just too good in the end. Obviously, when it counted in the last quarter, they really put the foot down and took advantage of an inexperienced North Melbourne side.
Yeah. 7 points up at three-quarter time. They finished that third quarter well. They probably got a lucky free kick for holding the ball, where the umpiring for about 5 minutes went just paying everything holding the ball.
Yes.
It was like, geez, Barry Robin and Greg Williams wouldn't have got rid of that. So I was disappointed with that. But then there was a North Melbourne player got hit high.
And nothing was...
should have been a free kick. So that was pretty crucial there. It was just more that 10 minutes I was frustrated going, come on, protect the player making the play.
Absolutely. Now, does the AFL look at changing its season timing again to maybe become a little bit more user-friendly, or are we now locked into a sort of towards the end of the men's AFL season, going into sort of November, December for an AFLW, because it did get quite warm there at one stage. I know, if you play it in February, you're sort of going to get the same result, but you would have thought that playing at the beginning of the year is probably a little bit more advantageous for the players than playing at the end of the year.
Not so much look, I get the bit on the weather, but I just think it was crazy that they threw away those weeks where they could get publicity where you weren't competing against the AFL. I'm sorry, you don't finish a main movie and then the trailers come on. Well, I just think it's crazy.
The thing about the men's game after the season is you generally then have trading period, draft periods, all that kind of stuff that really does take you through till mid-November, late November. So realistically, they're still going to be in the public eye. And like you said, when we're absolutely dying for some football in February, March, obviously with all the cricket going on, it's an area that I think that we need to be looking at. But anyway, we'll talk about that one a little bit later. All right, let's move on to the AFL men's. The Adelaide Crows, we finally find out why they reached, or the majority of the squad reached their personal bests on day one.
Yeah.
Darren Burgess comes out and says, if you don't want to do these extra bits of training today, we're gonna see if you can beat your personal best. So yeah, definitely Darren Burgess inspired there, but a little bit of a laugh and good for the players too. I mean, they've generally looked after themselves during the off season. A little bit of reward for effort as well, and it certainly doesn't go astray. And being early in a long pre-season, little wins like this can be very, very good to the squad. So, all right, we'll move on to Port Adelaide. Zach Butters signs on. Richly deserves his contract.
Yeah, look, he's a gun player. He is probably, with Rosie and Horn Francis, the three. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, look, you lock away your main assets.
Absolutely. We might talk about this one now. I was going to leave it to the SNFL, but we'll mention it now. Port have put in an application to the VFL to join the VFL. How do you feel about that one, mate?
Bemused a little bit. I don't understand what Port Adelaide are complaining about, saying that they're restricted by the SNFL. I just don't get it. Mm-hmm. I think the SNFL actually bent over backwards for the AFL clubs and things. So I just don't really. Yeah, okay, you can get used to travelling, so a little bit get used to the AFL, what you do as an AFL player, but I don't get it so much.
For me at the moment, it's I'm a bit conflicted a little bit, and this is going to be my next question was, how do you feel about Port actually being removed from the SNFL, considering the rivalries obviously being Norwood, but, Norwood and Sturt, Port and Sturt.
Being honest, that rivalry, it's not Port. That rivalry's died a few years ago.
Okay.
It's Port Power Reserves.
Right.
And, I get annoyed. I still think the established 1870 crap and all that.
Yep.
No, you started in 97.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have a history in a competition you weren't in. Yes, your club was, but that's SNFL. So I think it's ridiculous. That's my own, pretty firm on that. I just, as I said, I don't get it in terms of where they think the advantage is. Now, I've got no doubt the Crows will follow.
Yep.
Now, ironically, as an Ord person, this is not something I've spoken about with James Fantasia. I've spoken about it with 3 other club CEOs.
Yes.
Now, a couple of those don't think we can survive without the Crows financially. One does. So, again, I come back to this clandestine stuff that there should be far more openness exactly what the money comes from the Crows, from Stadium Management Authority, everything with the resulting, not this he say, she say, and hidden, which no one really knows. And let's just be honest about it. Look, I admit the AFL's lack of support for the SNFL and Waffle annoys, and it blows me away.
Yep.
That you're not going to get a Lee Spur, Nick Diagon, Puopolo, Barlow in the future out of it. It's all 18s and all that. I can't see, and I've said this for a while, I can't see how SNFL eventually doesn't become Div 1 a community footy unless the AFL doesn't want it to. And at the moment, it's shown no signs of that.
Well, that was going to be my next question is where does it leave the SNFL? You know, is it a case of that the AFL as the, I suppose, governing body to a certain degree compensates or provides funds to a state league like the SNFL or the VFL, or is there some sort of arrangement there that can be entered into to obviously help the SNFL stay alive? Really, at the end of the day, and I've got a topic that I might cover next week because it is a huge episode today. But we'll just finish off on the AFL. Brisbane looking to play home games in 3 different states as the Gabba's being redeveloped. That's pretty disruptive for a club, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's probably no other solution.
And then to finish us off, we'll just take a little bit of a look at a couple of sides at the moment. Unfortunately, Collingwood's premiership defence has been dealt a blow with the first week of pre-season training with Maynard and Elliott being injured.
Yeah, it's and losing McStay for the year. So, it's interesting. It's funny how the curse seems to hit the reigning premier or whatever in that way the next year.
It does, isn't it? Absolutely crazy at the moment. And because the players are starting so early and they're generally a bit fitter than normally, they've not taken too much of a break. Their body just doesn't get time to unwind, so to speak. And if it does, they tend to get injured. So we'll keep a bit of an eye on that throughout the other clubs as well. But I thought I'd start off with Collingwood today. All right, let's take a very, very quick break, mate. When we come back, golf with Craig Martin and Jake Weatherald as part of our Local Legends segment.
You're listening to the Game On podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Welcome back. We've got Craig Martin on the line today to talk all things golf, and we want to touch base on the Australian PGA Championship and the Australian Open. But before we do that, mate, just explain to the listeners how the 2 events differ from each other.
How they differ from each other? Well, effectively, they're the 2 major tournaments on the Australian calendar every year. The Australian PGA is effectively run by the PGA of Australia, and has always been a representation of the PGA professionals of Australia. So this year running was played up at Royal Queensland, obviously, a couple of weeks ago now, and Minwoo Lee put on a clinic basically. I think last time we spoke, I predicted he was Australia's next superstar, and he's
living up to it.
He's starting to bear fruit, and also on the world stage as well. But he put on a real clinic, and then of course, so that was purely for the men at the Australian PGA, and then last weekend we had the Australian Open, which was a men's and women's, as well as the All Abilities Championships, 3 events effectively running across 2 courses at the Lakes and the Australian. What looked after 2 rounds of being a foregone conclusion that Mim was going to run away with it. Golf is a funny sport. Just when you think you're on top of things, it come back to bite you, and that's exactly what happened to him. So
absolutely,
on the Sunday afternoon, it could have been one of 10 guys that effectively could have won it. Whereas in the women's, Ashley Buhai looked like she had it in the bag, but Minjee Lee put her in pressure, and in the end, she had to hold a 4-foot putt on the last hole to win. But whereas obviously with the men's went to a playoff, and Joaquin Neiman eagled second playoff hole to win, which was a fantastic performance. It's great actually as well for Australian golf, get international winners coming down, and he beat a Japanese player, Hoshino, I think his name off the top of my head, who ironically finished runner-up in both events, PGA and then Australian Open. So, they're our 2 major events on the Australian Tour, which attract the international players. And then, ironically, they're playing second day of Cathedral event today, which I've noticed Adam Scott had a 3-shot lead with about 6 holes to play. So waiting by the time this goes to air, obviously that would have been done and dusted, and then they go into a Christmas break before coming back January next year.
Obviously, great to see some international players come down for the Australian events. Was there any real surprises that jumped out at you that either didn't make the cut or did make the cut and didn't go on with it?
Well, obviously the biggest news was that the PGA with Cam Smith missing the cut when he was defending champion. Full credit to himself, though, and just shows you the type of guy that Cam Smith is. He could have quite easily spat the dummy and flown down to Sydney or gone surfing or whatever, but yeah, he was there on the Saturday signing autographs for the kids and putting on junior clinics and things like that. So, I mean, that just shows you the calibre of the guy. There's a surprise, as there's always. I mean, the beauty of the Australian tour is there's always shows young talent that is coming to the fore. I mean, if you look at the women's side of things, I think after 2 rounds, there were 4 amateurs in the top 10 players. Obviously, pressure got to them on the weekend, but young South Australian girl, Caitlin Pearce, finished equal 7th, I think it was in the end. But, you know, a top 10 finish in the Australian Open as an amateur, that's a fair performance. So
one to keep an eye on for the future.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I've caddied a couple of times in amateur events, and she's been in our group. And, yeah, she's certainly a very good ball striker. And I think we played with her at Royal Adelaide, actually, on her home course, and obviously knew that course well. But, yeah, she's certainly got a bright future.
And Minwoo Lee and sister, what do we say about them? Obviously, you know, sporting siblings. Are they going to be up there with some of the best?
I reckon they'll be able to afford to buy us a drink, put it that way.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully.
You think so? Yes. Yeah. I mean, Min G's obviously, she's got the runs on the board, and, you know, her performance has picked up another major during the year. And, you know, she's well established as a world superstar, but Min Woo is actually, you know, he's on the rise. He's only 23. And I think 2024 will be a massive year. I mean, it's a massive year for golf, just with all the politics still going on. But with Min, particularly in the majors for next year, I'd be really interested. Pretty sure he's got to start at the Masters. That golf course certainly will suit his play. I mean, he's high risk the way he plays. Mm-hmm. Higher risk, higher reward, but also obviously, as you saw on the weekend, that can come unstuck. So, yeah, I mean, he's got a magnificent future ahead of him. But I mean, Australian golf is just on the up. There's so much talent coming through, the young fellas and young girls for that matter.
So you talked about the politics of golf. Just give us a little bit of a rundown of what still needs to be ticked off for things to become a little bit smoother in the world of golf at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's just come out now with the scheduling for Live Golf for next year. I think the last time I mentioned might have been the second event coming to Australia. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. Although, having said that, there's a couple of events at the end of next year which are still TBC, so most likely they'll end up in the US. But, yeah, Live Golf, obviously there's a fair bit going on around that. This weekend they've got their I suppose they had their they culled some players, and now they've got the qualifying event in Abu Dhabi this weekend, where 3 players can win onto the main tour. Noting that Wade Ormsby, South Australian, is playing in that amongst quite a few others. He's won because of his standing in the Asian Tour. He's won through to day 2, but it's a 3-day event where effectively 3 players will win onto the Live Tour. Yeah, politics-wise, I think the biggest thing is the world golf ranking still is totally screwed up. Mm-hmm. You know, you got all these guys who are playing in Live and effectively, because their ranking keeps dropping, won't be able to play in some of the majors next year, which is just crazy. I mean, and the biggest rumour floating around at the moment is obviously John Rahm potentially joining the Live Tour. I was just reading prior to coming on air with you guys, you know, they're talking about $600 million will be his carrot to go over, including a 25% equity in a team. So they're obviously looking at expanding from the 12 teams they've currently got to, I mean, probably maybe to 15 max, but that would be a massive one because, I mean, any major that doesn't have John Rahm in it, I mean, effectively the majors should be the best golfers in the world playing, irrespective of what tour they're playing on. But the PGA Tour and the R&A and the powers to be really have got to get it all sorted. But as it stands, they still haven't, and very much being driven by the PGA Tour, trying to discredit the Live Tour. So interesting days still.
Well, Malcolm, you mentioned about offering a drink. I reckon he might be able to buy us a couple of drinks there. There's certainly a lot of money being thrown around, that's for sure.
Mind-boggling, isn't it? Yeah.
And, mate, just to get you out of here on this one, obviously, Live Golf coming back to Grange. Fantastic event last year, and a lot of people are excited for it.
Yeah, there was talk that it might have been earlier in the schedule, but it's been placed at the end of April. So tickets, just reading earlier that tickets have already been, like the corporate hospitality tickets have already been released, but also 3-day tickets. And just saw that Grange put out something earlier that tickets have already sold out in some instances, like 3-day passes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there'll probably be more tickets released. I'm no doubt there'll be some changes happening for next year. I think there'll be some changes to the course. There were some issues around congestion in certain areas of the course, which being such a big property, they've got plenty of options to change holes. I do believe also the watering hole may be moving, but that's all subject to rumour and innuendo until it all comes out. But yeah, certainly another fantastic event, and probably the fact that it's going to be away from the gather round as well is probably a good thing. Last year on back-to-back, probably limited Live a little bit, but I mean, the popularity from interstate was amazing, but it gives people interstate now an excuse to come here twice. So
it's always a good thing. And
it's great for tourism. It's incredible, really. That's probably the area which we don't really even understand enough of how vital
the numbers,
it is. Yeah.
Well, you think, especially for an event like that, it's a 3-day event, but you've got access to the players on the Pro-Am day as well. So, effectively, if you're flying in from Sydney or Melbourne or wherever, you're coming to Adelaide 5-6 days, you probably want to throw in some rounds of golf yourself. So there's the benefit for the other clubs getting green fees, obviously the accommodation and hospitality for the state. So, I mean, you just saw, obviously, last weekend or the weekend before with the Velo 500, how many people come over for that as well. I mean, the city's a buzz, and to spread it out rather than, we have our Mad March with Fringe, etc. It's good. So April next year, and weather-wise, it's similar to last year. So weather-wise, you're looking early 20s and good weather. And I noticed they've announced Fisher will be back as well, so that attracts a younger group with the doof music. So, although having said that, I did enjoy it last year; it was quite good. So yeah, it's just a totally different demographic that they're attracting.
Well, it was the first time that they had run the event, so there were going to be some teething problems, and it sounds like they're well and truly in hand to make slight adjustments to make the event bigger and better for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like anything, you've got a few teething issues and whatnot, but overall, I mean, the event surpassed everything they could have hoped for. So this year, bigger and better. So wait and see.
Absolutely. All right, mate. Thank you very much for your time and letting us know about everything golf and filling us in on a couple of little politics issues there with Live and PGA and everything else. But I reckon we'll touch base with you again right around the Live tournament time.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, February, March comes into the main season, and obviously you've got first majors of the year, Masters, first week of April. So sometime around there, it'd be great to talk to you guys again.
Thanks, mate.
Appreciate it.
Right. Cheers, guys.
We thank Craig once again for his time there. All right, we move on to SANFL North Adelaide this week. Coming players, Tariq Newchurch returning from Adelaide, Cody Ruck from the Western Bulldogs, Sam Ramsey from South Adelaide. Is it Blaine O'Loughlin returned from Adelaide and Austin Harris from the Essendon VFL? Yeah,
I rate Blaine O'Loughlin. Was really impressed with him a couple of games as watching him with the Crows in the finals. I admit I would have loved him at Nord. I think he's a very good player.
We need to get Nord to give you a blank check and see if we can get some of these players over the line. Of the going, we've got Aaron Young, Cameron Craig, Andrew Moore, Jesse White and Kane McAuliffe.
Yeah, McAuliffe's been picked up by Richmond. Yep. Promising out of the 18s. He's related to McAuliffe, the racing commentator.
Terry,
that's it, to Terry McAuliffe. Apologies.
That's right.
I think Cameron Craig's one where, again, plenty of SANFL footy left in him. Same with Joseph Haynes, same with Cam Ball. but the demands time versus financial reward and that isn't. And that's where I think the SANFL club's training now 3 times a week, 4 times a week. I'm not convinced. And I get it. They've got to almost, with Port and Adelaide in the competition, they've almost got to do it. So it's a catch-22.
Byproduct, yep.
You know, so they think, well, if we do that, if we don't do that, we're a mile behind them. But I reckon they're actually losing players because of doing it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So that is one thing when they do go that hopefully there might be a bit more common sense.
Bit of readjustment going on there. Yeah, fair call. And we did talk about North Adelaide's surprise with getting Jesse White back through the door. And then a year later, he's back to local club again.
Yeah, I think it's just your body again. With that, you know, probably a little bit more. It's just because there's more contest, that side of things. And I dare say his body would have struggled with the training.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
All right, like we have said before, there are some comings and goings still going with some of these clubs, and we'll touch base with that a little bit later on, but we'll go with the information we've got at the moment, and we do want to sort of keep the topics going as far as the SANFL goes. All right, we move on to soccer. Adelaide United going down 4-3 to Macarthur FC in a pretty entertaining game, actually.
Yeah, disappointing to be up, though, by a goal with about 8 to 10 minutes to go. Yep. So, yeah, that was disappointing to lose from there, not to get the draw. So a costly result. But scoring goals, probably it's bemusing where their 2 defeats has had so many goals scored against them.
Yes.
10 goals scored in
those they're either giving
games.
up nothing and scoring themselves or giving up plenty and scoring a little bit. So, one to keep a bit of an eye on there for sure. Next up, Brisbane Roar, Sunday the 10th of December. 4th v 5th, a must-win for United with some tough games to come.
Yeah, important game. Yep, no doubt about that.
And just sticking with the soccer, we've got the A-League. Women's soccer star puts football career on hold due to financial obligations. Chloe Knott.
Yeah, you'd like to hear more about the whole story. It'd be interesting to know everything.
Absolutely.
Bit hard to comment on that one without knowing enough.
Yeah, but
I think.
I thought I'd throw that one in there on the basis, and you mentioned it a little bit with the SANFL players and the training and, giving up time and trying to fit it all in with work and all the other commitments that they've got. So I just thought I'd put that one in there just to touch the water a little bit on that one.
Oh, I think it's a relevant point, but it'd be interesting to know more.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a very, very quick break. When we come back, Jake Weatherald.
You're listening to the Game On podcast. We'll be right back after this short break. Local legends.
We're pleased today to have a nephew of a former guest in Tin Weatherald, in Jake Weatherald, former South Australian opening batsman, now playing his trade with Tasmania, 3,178 first-class runs at an average of 34. Of course, 100 for the Strikers in the grand final. We'll certainly get to that. We welcome aboard Jake, and first off, I'm going to bag myself first, and then because we both, just doing a bit of research, got unusual middle names. Now, my middle name is Somerset, named after my grandfather, who was born in Somerset. Now, your middle name, go for it, Weathers.
My middle name is Beef. So my middle name is Beef. It's just after my grandfather. So nothing much there from me. But yeah, Beef is just.
Oh well, we're both middle names named after our grandfathers, Weathers. So there you are.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Mate, thanks for joining us today. Obviously, we like to research our guests, and we came up with that you started your juniors back in the Northern Territory. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, so I was from Darwin, which is obviously a fair way away from the rest of the world in Australia. So, so I just started there. It's obviously a footy-based territory, very dominant with their footy. But I was lucky enough that my best mate at the time, who also played for South Australia, Tommy Andrews, his old man loved his cricket. So he sort of dragged me along and sort of said, oh, mate, you should play some cricket. You can play for your country and that. So better than playing footy. So I sort of just jumped on board, and all my best mates were playing that. So I sort of just kept doing that, really. So it was great.
Was there a local club that you played for?
I did. I played for Darwin Cricket Club, which is in Carlin Oval, which is in the city there. But yeah, I also played for Tracy Village as well when I went back a few years later when I was a bit older too. So I played for a couple of clubs, but Darwin was the club that I sort of, plied my trade when I was a young guy and sort of learned everything, so which was good.
And of course, your dad in Rob Weatherald, who played for Sturt with footy, did he try and push you footy-wise, or just whatever was fine with us?
My dad's not very aggressive when it comes to what sport I play. He just wanted me to play as much sport as possible. He didn't really care what I did.
Yep.
He coached me in everything, so he sort of just did whatever I was doing. He sort of tried to get involved and help me out with that. My mum was really big on that as well. She sort of, she's the one that took me to tennis lessons, cricket, footy and all that stuff. But yeah, cricket was sort of once I didn't get much taller than 5'10", I sort of just, cricket sort of became the natural progression after that.
I was going to ask, when did you sort of realise that that cricket was going to be the main sport that you were going to play? It sounds like the height was probably the deciding factor.
Yeah, it probably was. I wasn't that good at footy either, so I wasn't that good at tennis. So I was sort of just a decent at all of them. And then, cricket was sort of the one that I sort of excelled at a bit at a younger age. So I was just happy to go through that path, and I sort of loved it. I sort of fell in love with the game after the 2005 Ashes. I sort of fell in love with cricket after watching that, staying up every night watching that. I just felt that's what I want to do. That's, be able to represent your country would be a pretty amazing thing. So I was just, sort of got hooked on cricket from there on, and everything else sort of took a back step after that.
And when did you move down to South Australia?
I was 15 when I moved down. I went to Prince Albert College.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
On the back of, probably just more opportunities for education. The education system, while it can be good, I probably needed to, probably needed to sort myself out. Wasn't the best when it came to academics, so my parents sort of sent me down south, thankfully. My mum was a pretty big driver for that. She sort of said, you need to go sort yourself out. So I moved down when I was 15 to boarding school, and then, it sort of helped me probably pursue other avenues of, obviously sport, academics and all that sort of stuff. So it was a great move, really. And
did you just play for the school at that stage, or were you involved with the club?
I was involved loosely with Sturt through my uncle, Nick, and Tim obviously playing at Sturt. So I sort of just, I was associated by name, really. And then once I'd finished private school, because you had to play for your school until you were 16, 17. So once I was done there, I'd go and play grade cricket for Sturt. So that was sort of quite nice to go and have a bit of both, playing men's and kids cricket. So it was good.
And of course, you opened at Prince's with Kelvin Smith generally, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so we had a pretty good, pretty strong side. It's actually we didn't lose many games.
Was Opes playing then? I'm trying to think. Was Elliot Opie playing then, or is he a bit after that? Just trying to remember.
He was a bit after me. Yeah. He was a bit before me, sorry.
Right. I was just trying to get my years right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tommy Andrews as well in our team.
Yeah.
So we had quite a strong side. Right. So we're quite lucky.
And then at Sturt, and then you decided to go to uni, which Mick took brilliantly, didn't he? He didn't mind that at all. Like how long was it before he spoke to you again with us?
No, it was a couple of days, but he was all right. He was fine. He was really good with it all. Really,
to stir Mick up.
I probably hit on his own himself, but it was obviously nothing personal against him. Yeah. So I just sort of, but he took it really well. He didn't take it well at the start, but he was awesome. He was very accepting of the fact that it was my own journey. So he was great with that, and he was ever since then. He's been super supportive, and he's always just been in my corner ever since. So I'm very grateful for him. He's probably out of all my family members, he was probably the one person that probably actually spent a lot of time actually training with me. Like my dad, while he liked cricket, never really, wasn't going to spend hours throwing balls to me, where Mick was always keen to do that stuff. So I owe him a lot for that. Oh, and
Mick's very respected coaching-wise in South Australia in both footy and cricket. He coached, that's where I know him originally from, where Mick played cricket at Payneham, and then he got himself and Jeff Wilson out to uni, and Mick was incredible in that regard. You 300-odd people who played footy for uni, and you remembered every single person's name and all that. He's incredible. Incredible like that.
Yep.
Of course,
he's amazing.
Yeah, so playing at uni, you sort of arrived then at uni, didn't you, in terms of some runs and push your name from there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely got a lot better. It wasn't to do with the fact that I wasn't getting good at sturt, stuff like that. They probably gave me the ability to learn about myself and how to play men's cricket and also how to push myself further. But the opportunity to train with Cammy Borges, who played first-class cricket, I wasn't in the system at the time, so I was a bit. So I just needed someone to give me a bit of kick up the backside in terms of what the right things to do were. So that was probably the way I could do that. So he was awesome, and uni was sort of the place to do it. I felt as though they had the facilities and the opportunity for me to do that. So.
Now, were you just like ambulance or a copper going past?
Yep.
Did you bat or just bowl or
keeper a bit back then,
right?
Too, back in the junior days.
Yeah, I kept that as well. So I sort of a bit of an opportunity to potentially break into the first class setup as a bit of a keeper batter or a batter keeper. I wasn't that great with the gloves at all, to be fair, but I said, if I can have a second string to my bow, I'm happy to do that. So I sort of went across the opportunity to keep. And
I reckon you're a bit better keeper than what you're putting yourself down a bit there, Weathers, too. I reckon you were a fair keeper. Yep. Go on, mate.
Yeah, I wasn't too bad, but I was a lot better at batting. So my batting was what got me there in the end, but I think it was provided me a bit of extra incentive to try a bit harder in different areas as well and develop my game. So, I thought it was a good learning curve no matter what, just to go and do something a little bit different than just batting. So.
Now, did you score any 50s or 100s at Sturt, and then conversely, obviously at uni?
Yeah, so I probably made a few scores over the batting. They were very good, very patient with me. I was lucky to have the Borges brothers when I was playing there. So I sort of had someone to open with that was quite established in South Australian cricket. Obviously played a few first-class games and stuff. And then, so when I made a few scores, it was good. But then when I went across to uni, it sort of blossomed a bit more. I sort of started consistently making hundreds, and I was sort of started to dominate grade cricket, which was ultimately the way you need to be if you wanted to play first-class cricket. So.
Then debuted for South Australia in 2016. I will be honest, Weathers, so go along to a Shield game. As you know, I'm a Shield moron. We tend to know each other in terms of that regard, the people who are. And you're fielding at square leg and gully and that. And I was actually standing with James Pike. And I'm pissing myself laughing. And he's going, what the hell's so funny? And I said, because watching Jake is just like watching a junior Tim all over again. Your mannerisms were just so ridiculously identical. It was funny.
It's amazing, eh? Yeah, you never pick that up when you're playing yourself, but it was awesome that someone could pick that up. Yeah, it's so cool, isn't it?
It was, and it was obviously a link there with knowing, obviously knowing Tim well over the years and Mick and that. So obviously I was drawn to follow you immediately in that regard, and of course the Shield final was frustrating, Weathers, in terms of against Victoria at the Bay. We're still waiting. We're still waiting for Hanscom to be given out LBW off Chad Sayers, the plumbest LBW I've ever seen. And you hit him really well to start with, and unfortunately you got out. I reckon to Dan Christian just before lunch. I reckon on the first day on memory, Weathers, where you batted well in both innings, but unfortunately we just needed someone to really go on and get a decent 100 in that game, and we sort of stuffed it up a little bit. So, but that LBW decision, it was again too, Pete. That was funny in terms of Shield games. Normally, no one there.
Yes.
And this LB's been given not out, and because it was a Shield final, they were playing it online, and we watched it straight away, and it is still to this day the plumbest LBW I've ever seen given not out.
Yeah, I know.
And I walked around to Chad at fine leg, and that was unreal. And his reply was quite colourful, and I had to remind Chad, there's actually people here today. It's not like the normal Shield game.
So true.
Yes.
What are your memories of your first game of Shield cricket? Did you get presented with your cap, and who was it if it was to go that way? And just talk about that a little bit.
It was a pretty strange debut, to be fair. We played in Coffs Harbour, which is a lovely spot. but yeah, we played New South Wales, which was obviously they were quite strong at the time. Jamie Siddons presented my cap. It wasn't the most traditional way of getting presented your cap. I sort of just got given it. I think South Australia was in a pretty weird space in terms of sort of rotating through openers quite quickly at the time. So I don't think they were like, I don't know if it was the most, celebrated thing for me getting my debut. So it was for me, but yeah, it was sort of like there was quite a few openers that opened that year. We sort of hadn't got it right in terms of who was opening the batting. So I guess it wasn't the most celebrated thing. But yeah, it was good. I got Jamie Siddons presented my cap in terms of just gave me the cap and said good luck. And then we played New South Wales with quite a strong side, Doug Bollinger, Trent Copeland, Sean Abbott, and we actually bossed the whole game, to be fair. We batted really well. Limo made a really nice 100. I made 50 odd in the first inning. I made 300 odd, and we ended up rolling them. And then, they chased down 300 in the last innings or something. And, they just, Benny Rohrer made his first 100 for like 2 years.
That's right. I do remember that now.
So we sort of got robbed of. I remember getting a message from Cam Borges saying, "Mate, you're about to win your first Shield game." It took me 30 games to do that, South Australia. So, and I was just like, so good. That's gonna be great. And then we ended up losing it, we lost the unlosable that game. And then so that sort of. But then after that, we sort of went on this winning streak. So I won quite a few games after that next 2 years and played 2 Shield finals. So I was pretty lucky, really.
And there is one amusing thing in one of those Shield finals. Didn't take you long to get a wicket, at least, Weathers.
No, I didn't. No, I always said to Hetty, if you bowled me, mate, I'll go change the game for you. I didn't really change that game, to be fair. We filled it for 2.5 days. So I was a bit, but I was excited to bowl. I was ecstatic at that time just to have an opportunity to do something different. I'd been fielding for so long, and I was just in Alice Springs. It was so hot, and it was just needed some excitement out of that game. Once the first 2 days were done and the game was pretty much dead and buried, there wasn't much to sort of celebrate after that.
Yeah.
So.
Who did you get?
I got Aaron Finch, which I was pretty happy with. I remind him constantly when I see him. So.
Make sure if you any interview he does with you, I want to make sure that's brought up every time with us, all right?
Yeah, exactly right, 100%.
And, of course, then you actually had a big game against Cricket Australia 11, Weathers, in the Matador One Day Cup. In 16-17.
Yeah, we were lucky. We played them on a very small ground and sort of kick-started my one day career as well. So I sort of just walked out. I got dropped by Josh Inglis as well at point. And then I went on made 140 odd or something, whatever it was. And then it's just sort of one of those games where you want to get the first 100 in one day cricket on the board, and then sort of get to play against them was quite lucky, to be fair. So I was quite happy with that. And then it sort of just gave me confidence to go out and play a lot more one-day cricket in terms of like how aggressive you want to be and stuff like that. So I was lucky that sort of got a nice stepping stone into domestic one-day cricket.
Back to that Shield final in Alice Springs, the one thing out of that game was Alex Carey breaking the Shield record of keeping. And as someone who has watched a lot of Shield cricket, Alex Carey's keeping that year was as good as there's been in Shield cricket. He was incredible.
Oh, yeah.
So
he was amazing. Yeah, he was a great year for him. He sort of put him on the map, really, I know everyone thought he was talented with the bat, but, his glove work, Australians have always been very big on having very good glovemen. So I think that was probably the thing holding him back. But then at the same time, once he had that year, sort of courtesy of Chad Sayers getting all the edges, he sort of mopped up the work and did a really good job and was really clean. So I think, credit to him. It was such a good year for him, but he hasn't looked back since. So it's been great for him.
Did you score a few runs in that Matador Cup?
Yeah, I did score a few runs. Yeah, I was happy with that year. I was happy with I actually really enjoyed those Matador Cups. It sort of gave a bit of rhythm to your game as well. You could go and play. You play consistent one-day cricket. Where at the moment you sort of just you play a one-day game. You don't have to play for 3 weeks. Play a Shield game and then you rock up and got to play another one. It's sort of just a bit disjointed. So it always find it hard to sort of get rhythm, and the game is moving so dramatically and towards being quite aggressive. So and the scores are going up and up. So the tempo you need to bat with it's just altering quicker and quicker every game. So it's just creating it's made it harder, but definitely a good challenge.
Of course, since we're interviewing you and you are in WA, and we greatly appreciate you taking a call over in WA with us, but it should be one Shield game which brings back fantastic memories. Let's go through that, where you dominated a Shield game in WA, mate, in 17-18.
Yeah, that was a good game, to be fair. It was one of those ones where I was probably a bit short on runs as well. I hadn't batted it that well leading up to that game. And I was sort of in a bit of... I just watched Cameron Bearcroft pile on the hurt, make 200. And then, yeah, it was one of those ones where I just walked out there and said, well, bugger it, I'm just going to go out and try to tee off a little bit here. Try to put myself in a good position to score, and thankfully it all worked out after that. It's just one of those games where you just see it like beach balls, and the WAC is such a great place to play, so I was very lucky.
Yeah, he's got 152 off 160 balls in the first dig, and then 143 to get us home in the second dig, Weathers.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was one of those very rare times in your career where you feel good both innings. I've never played in a game ever since then. You talk to so many cricketers around the world and domestically about batting, and they're just like, you know what? There's just never a time in your life where you feel like you're in twice in a row. I was just lucky that that day happened, and against a good attack, I was very, very proud moment, I guess.
Now, Jake, we will go to a serious question. Like, I reckon people would watch you and think, oh, he's a sort of happy-go-lucky bloke and all that. And I think probably like all of us, we're probably guilty of hiding what we really are a bit. And I think you probably need to know Jake Weatherald to realise, no, he's pretty intense and pretty sweet, fair dinkum about making it. And so you've gone through some mental health challenges and been really honest about it, Jake. And we are getting better as blokes, but we've still got a long way to go. Just cover that, go wherever direction you want to there, Jake.
It's one of those things that it's obviously one of those, it's quite public because you play in a sport that's so revered in Australia. But also you try to be respectful of the fact that you don't want to devalue, the sport you're in as well by making decisions to step away. But I was always big on the fact that, like, if I wanted to be a great partner and a great person, that I needed to step away from cricket in order to do that. I probably felt as though that cricket became, I was not the greatest person in terms of what I felt as though was genuinely, I cared about myself, but also cared about the people around me. I thought it became quite segregated from what I really could be as a person. So I sort of thought as though if I take breaks off cricket periodically, I could have a good opportunity to, come back in a mind frame that was healthy for myself, but also better for my partner and better for my family and better for my friends. But also, make sure that when I am playing cricket, I'm doing the best I can. I'm not just, sort of not doing the right team thing as well. So I think mental health is one of those, a spectrum of things. But yeah, we are getting a lot better understanding that, like injuries or anything else, periods of time off, it doesn't mean it's the end of their career or anything. It's just times that you get where people aren't their best, and if they're safe enough to go off and have a bit of time off, which Saka have been really good with me with that, and so has Cricket Tasmania. They've been really good at understanding the fact that I do have like anxiety and OCD and stuff like that, and things that I take medication and stuff for. So I've sort of got to, they've got to realise that if I want to be at the best position as a player, I've got to be able to also be right mentally. And you're not always going to be right mentally, but there's a good opportunity to, if you can be consistent in what you're doing day to day. It's hard sometimes when you're playing cricket all the time and on the road and in front of people's eyes. You sort of sometimes you lose the who you are as a person, which is makes it quite difficult sometimes.
And we've just been talking with Jake Weatherald, and he was kind enough to give us his time last week. We did pre-record this interview, and he was in Perth, not actually playing, but training.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So he's moved to Tasmania.
Yep.
He's going to be playing the Big Bash for the Strikers. Is it a Shield game in Perth training? So, yeah, it's...
It's the, like we've talked about just previously, that the modern cricket player is travelling around everywhere, not only internationally but nationally. And, no, we thank Jake for his time and, just sort of going through how, came from Northern Territory down to South Australia and really for opportunity. He gets another go in Tasmania, and we wish him the best for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, oh, look, my understanding is that Adelaide didn't. He left of his own, but he would have been offered a contract still with the Redbacks.
But like you said, he needed a little bit of a change.
Yeah, maybe. It's funny with, at the moment, their whole batting isn't clicking, and it's interesting where the mix is all wrong. Like, you had Hunt and Cardner. At one stage, Cardner had 1 off 34 balls, and I think Hunt was 5 off the other 30.
Yes.
So after 10 overs, we were none for 6 or so. Like, with Weatherald batting at that stage, we're 30 or 40.
Yep.
You know, so I think they've missed him.
Supply and demand a little bit.
Yeah, and I just don't think their mix is right.
Let's take a very, very quick break. When we come back, happy days.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe. Happy days.
All right, kicking off happy days today. Happy birthday to Tim Cahill, Australian soccer forward, 108 caps, 50 goals for Everton, born in Sydney, New South Wales, an attacking midfielder, but also played as a striker on many occasions. Box-to-box midfielder, Cahill became recognised for his aggressive and powerful approach and his ability to head of the ball in the penalty area.
As good a header as there's been in the sport. I think at the moment he's Craig Johnson's obviously up there as well, but for impact and his impact for Australia, I think he's our number one. So
yeah, well, we talk about a little bit about the Mount Rushmore of 3 or 4. I think you can't go wrong, and certainly his commentary at the moment in the EPL, giving some insight as well, very, very good. I mean, Australia's starting to get recognised on the world stage. I know he did, move at quite a young age, but. He still has Australia's roots at heart, and certainly one of the all-time greats, as you said. Cahill scored 50 goals in 108 caps in 2004 and 2018, is regarded as one of Australian great players, as you said.
Which is huge for soccer in terms of a demand. 1 out of 2, nearly a goal every 2 games is a very high strike rate.
Absolutely, and we did talk about last week with the Vardy record that... Goals in soccer are very, very hard to come by. All right, we move on to cricket. 1987, one of my favourite cricketers, David Boon's 5th Test century, 143 against New Zealand at Brisbane.
Yeah, and probably start off the ground as well, just as much as on the ground, Booney, and he probably related to the Australian as much as anyone. Mm-hmm. Him and Doug Walters in that way are probably the
Merv Hughes a little bit?
Yeah, and Merv, just as the
happy-go-lucky, yep.
And the Australian who loved the beer, and probably that really fits into the Australian culture and develops a love there. And, the legendary story of, Bernie, the 52 cans, whatever it was.
Going over to England,
yeah.
Absolute legend of a player, and one that gets a little bit forgotten, a little bit on the basis that, the wars and borders and McDermott, were around during that era, but Booney was absolutely classic, and like you said, feeds into the Australian psyche beautifully. All right, we move on. Tennis in 1988, Boris Becker beats defending champion Ivan Lendl 5-7, 7-6, 3-6, 6-2, 7-6 in a classic final to win his first of 3 ATP Masters tennis titles at Madison Square Gardens in New York City. That is Ivan Lendl was the machine when it came to outlasting a lot of players, and Boris Becker gets him on this occasion.
Yeah, they probably weren't as charismatic. Certainly, Becker was probably a little bit more in that way, but where he was more just Ivan was more just get the ball back.
Yes.
And that probably a little bit like Leighton in that way, but
very
because
much.
Leighton was the Australian, we probably warmed to him more and that, although some didn't obviously with Leighton, but Boris probably a little bit more in the serve than Ivan, but yeah. Ivan Lendl was, let's be honest, he's probably a bee's dick away from being regarded as one of the all-time greats. If just the odd point here and there goes his way. Fine line between pleasure and pain, Jay Griffin.
Absolutely, and we've seen that through a lot of players' careers that they're in the wrong era and just getting pipped at the post by an absolute star of the game, and Boris Becker is one of those. All right, we move on to the Olympics 2017. Russia is banned from the next Winter Olympics in South Korea over state-sponsored doping.
Yes, yet again. Yeah, pretty sad and just frustrating, but yet again.
You would have thought that the lesson would have been learned
that's
over,
exactly what I was thinking. And
over the period or over the journey.
Yeah, it's just not good enough. Yeah,
absolutely.
Bizarre.
And to finish us off today, mate, 1987 basketball, an absolute legend here. Larry Bird ends his streak of 59 consecutive three throws.
Pretty disappointing by Larry not to get to 60. Yeah, come on, lift your game, son.
An absolute legend of the game there. And, again, we talk about that Mount Rushmore, and he's certainly one that is up there as well, but doesn't get regarded as much because he's probably a point or two on this occasion, like we said, could have got to 60 and become an all-time legend. So, we'll move on. Let's scoot into the extra time big finish.
Bit disappointing, Larry. Come on.
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, kick us off for the Adelaide Giants playing the Sydney Blue Sox here. We tied the series 2-2.
Yeah, after winning the first two, was a little bit disappointing there. But obviously still on top. Big series against Melbourne Aces this weekend.
Absolutely.
At West Beach.
At West Beach, that's right.
I wish it was at the parade. Yes.
Giants still sitting top of the ABL with played 12, won 9, lost 3. So they're in pretty good shape.
Good spot.
Wouldn't want to drop too many more, but just sort of finding their feet very, very nicely. All right, we move on to the NBA first, and then we'll move on to the NBL. The NBA, the Boston Celtics and the Orlando Magic sitting top of the Eastern Conference, and the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets sitting top of the Western Conference. No real surprises there at the moment, but again, we are fairly early into the season, so we'll see how that one plays out over the next couple of months. We want to talk about the 36ers, unfortunately going down in both their games to New Zealand and Tasmania. 2 massive losses, but sort of complaining a little bit about the schedule, which I'm not 100% sure about.
I don't think it helped them that it was an out clause for the players beforehand.
Yeah. And that's probably where it not quite sits well with me, is that it's
more a thing which should have been kept internal in terms of internal management to kick up a stink about it, but not give that to the players. Because,
they're sitting 9th at the moment and really almost season's over.
And the sacking of the coach, CJ Bruton, gone today. Yep. So, you wonder out of that. Look, do you want to be at an airport at 4:30 or so in the morning? No. But don't make it public and so everyone's whinging.
Mm-hmm.
Jump aboard. Hey, this is a challenge, guys.
Absolutely. Well,
who's up for coffees? Make something of it.
12 months ago, they were in the US and knocking off an NBA team. Yeah. The challenge was set then.
Yeah.
No excuses. You're right. All right, we'll circle back to that one, I'm sure, at some stage, obviously, with new coach being appointed or an interim coach being appointed. The WNBL, the Adelaide Lightning 6, 2 wins, 4 losses. 1 or 2 wins outside the top 4 at the moment. It is early days.
Let's wait and see.
We'll see how we go on that one. And we did talk about Monique Conti, basically code hopping.
Yeah.
Back on the court as if nothing's changed.
She'll sort of go down if he plays against her in a handball or footy to her, test her reflexes on the court as well.
Absolutely. So, unbelievable anyway. All right, we move on to tennis. Alicia Molik didn't take long to find her feet after finishing up as the Fed Cup or Billie Jean Cup coach. Ends up being the tournament director at Memorial Drive, and there was a little bit of drama attached to that.
Yeah.
Young ball kid or a young player in the background passing out.
Made earn her keep straight away.
Straight off the bat.
Let's test out her ability.
She turned around and didn't know what was going on, and then attended to the young lady, and we have found out obviously subsequently that she is okay and everything's all okay. But wow, appointed to a new role, basically have to jump on the court pretty much straight away. And Alicia, obviously being from South Australia, more than happy to be back in and trying to achieve, some goals as far as getting some of these great players here.
Yeah.
All right, we move on to the SNFL. The AFL considering a State of Origin game during the gather round for this season coming.
Yeah, no.
Some rumours being mooted?
Yeah, no, that's been around. Hasn't been anything said of whether it'll be at Nord or Mount Barker or Adelaide Oval.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously hoping that it's at Nord.
Yep.
But just wait and see. But no, I think it is going to happen.
Okay. So the rumours are gaining momentum?
Yep.
Interesting. We'll keep a bit of an eye on that one. The SNFLW to introduce a salary cap for the upcoming season of $30,000 and then increasing it to 32 over the 25 and 26 seasons.
Yeah, and there's also plans for that to become more and more games and
looking to go from 12 to 14 games.
And then eventually 18. So, it's, development to also remembering that they introduced a reserve, they called it Development League.
Yep.
And not sure why that was the Development League set of reserves, but that's fine.
Yep.
Just a word. But, so it is, again, it's still showing the explosion in numbers in female footy. Like, Paynham's got 2, and I think I'm not sure whether there may even be 3.
Mm-hmm.
Uni's a couple. I think Broadies are at least 2, and that. So, so there's huge numbers playing footy.
I got a Christmas card in the mail the other day from the local MP.
Yes.
Generally, you don't take too much notice of it, but it was a little bit of a booklet on, what they've been doing in the area. And the one thing that sort of piqued my interest in just flipping through it very, very quickly was the amount of infrastructure that the governments, not only federally and state, are actually putting into local sporting clubs.
Yeah.
But mainly because of the female participation rate.
Exactly.
And if you think about it, and I actually stopped and thought about it for a second, going, well, if these clubs didn't have this investment being made in them because of the female development side of things, where would some of these clubs actually be?
Oh, there's no doubt that female involvement is saving community clubs. It's also, I do know in terms of one club where if there was a female game on, I think the Amateur League should go back to this.
Yes.
The female, it still happened a bit. I'd like to see it more. So I'm not really having it. Still happened, but probably can be refined a little bit more. Was the female game starting at about 5:30, 5:45, whatever on the Saturday night, and it keeps people around.
Yep,
which keeps the bar trade up. So I do think working together. Well, I know in that way is the way to go.
Some SNFL clubs actually had the triple headers. Sometimes they were at the earlier part of the day, and sometimes at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think all of those things are very, very important, not only at a local level, but at a at a state level as well.
I just think at community level that it's really important to have those clubs being involved together.
Yes,
a bit.
Well, you think about it. Your resources are already open. You're
less trainers, less medical staff.
Yep.
People are there. Canteen person is there. Well, okay, you might pay it more to be open longer.
Players
but there's things you can work around it.
And players who have just finished can also help out as well
if
absolutely needed, which really fosters that club environment. So we'll keep a bit of an eye on that one, and really looking forward to hopefully some more female participation there at local club level. All right, mate. The good, the bad, the ugly. What was your good for the week?
Good was let's go with the Strikers.
Yeah, he stole my thunder.
We have to on that one was the good. Bad Redbacks.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a fanatic on the Redbacks.
Yes.
Disappointing again. Emma's going, why do you get upset about them sort of thing yet again?
Yeah, passionate
used
sports.
to 30-something years now.
Yep.
It's like she goes, it just happens every year. It's the holy grail. Push the button, repeat. You still get your hopes up.
You won't know what to do with yourself if they actually do pull off something pretty incredible. But, you're ugly for the week.
No, nothing really strikes me on that way.
Maybe we'll take the ugly out of it and just keep the good and the bad. But
and then keep it in terms of when there's real impact on something shocking that week. I think might be the way to go.
My good for the week would have to probably be that Zach Butters has signed on at Port Adelaide. I think he's an absolute gun.
He's a gun.
And the WBBL back-to-back champions obviously has to be there, but Brisbane also taking out the flag.
Yeah.
My bad a little bit is probably with the AFLW. I think they probably could have got at least 30,000 to marvel if they had moved it in time. But, it is what it is. But, my ugly at the moment is probably the 36ers.
Yes. Yep. I think you've well played on that. I think that's a great call. The 36ers have been really disappointing overall now for a fair while. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know so the game went on sale for the tickets, when it sold out and how much time they would have then had to do things.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
an
probably not
one.
a bad one for me. It's probably more of a disappointing one.
Yeah.
That, Icon Park being chock-a-block full was a great atmosphere, and it would have been exactly like Nord Oval as well. But you go back a few years to Adelaide Oval, and it's absolute chockers. So I know we can't compare, but it's certainly something that could have been thought through a little bit more.
Yep.
All right, mate, we'll leave it there. What a fantastic episode we've had. We thank Craig Martin for his time, and we also thank Jake Weatherald for his time. And as per usual, mate, we promise to do better.
Might turn my phone off next time.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at SportsCast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.